From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, this is Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Riley Smith. In today's show, Mark has the first part of his conversation with Grant Harms of Corteva Agriscience. I visit with Clean Fuels Alliance Director of Public Affairs Paul Winters, and Dustin talks with Ag and Business Legal Strategies Associate Attorney Austin Peiffer. Now let's welcome in our hosts, Mark Magnuson and Dustin Huffman.
Well, here we are back on a little bit of a rain-soaked beginning of a Tuesday in Des Moines. I'm Dustin Huffman, Mark Magnuson joining me as well. Now, I got here before the rain started, but you and Riley both said that you ran into it here today. What kind of things did you see around Des Moines here with that rain shower activity that we've been kind of waiting on for a few days?
It was kind of funny, Dustin. I live over in Waukee, so for those of you who don't know, just west of Des Moines, and then it had already rained in Waukee. So I'm driving into Des Moines. I just kind of figured it would be similar conditions. Wasn't the case though. And then when I get here to the parking lot, it was dry. I was a little confused. And then a few minutes later, it did start to rain here. But we are getting these rains at a pivotal time, which is, a nice help for the crops right now. And especially coming out of that heat stress that the crops were dealing with here recently, to have a little bit cooler temperatures and then get some moisture as well has to be a huge boost here as we get close to the stretch run of the growing season.
Yeah, and as I mentioned in the newsletter yesterday, which if you're not getting, you can sign up for it at iowaagnet.com. But I did mention that we're looking at a night here, possibly Wednesday night, where we could see lows dipping down even into the 50s overnight. That would definitely, upper 50s, but that's definitely a relief because usually when we have the heat domes and the corn sweat, you want to see that get out of the 70s and into at least the 60s so the corn can relax overnight. But and that's what we're seeing right now. But getting it back into the 50s will be even a little bit better. Maybe it'll break some of that humidity that we're having. But again, it's supposed to warm back up a little bit on Thursday. But again, more seasonable temperatures. It's nothing, quite like we saw here at the end of July, where it was just sweltering and heat indexes at 120 or so. It doesn't look like any of that's coming back anytime soon. In fact, this whole first week of August, they are really thinking the markets are watching that it's not going to be much of a stress for the plants at all.
And to that point, we had talked about this at the Corteva Agriscience Field Day last week. I think that magic number for when the corn, for example, kind of goes into hibernation sleep mode for the day is when it gets to 86 degrees. So you think about all of those days that we've had above 86 here recently. I mean, there just hasn't been a lot of a help for the crops because it has been so warm, and that temperature just kind of causes things to slow down. And then at night as well, if those temperatures don't go to a certain level, it creates issues in the overnight period as well. So it is definitely a little bit of relief for the crops right now, and something that we are welcoming very much as we as this point of the year, and we saw it last year. Corn started to deteriorate pretty quickly as we got to the stretch run of the growing season, with all of that disease pressure that we had as well just continued to pile that stress onto the crops.
All right, and we're going to take that weather premium out of the markets this week, possibly war premium. We're going to hear more Joe Camp of Comstock visiting now with Mark Magnuson.
Joined today by Joe Camp of Comstock for the opening market discussion. Joe, what's happening with the trade in the grains?
Have to say it, turnaround Tuesday so far. It was up to start the week, actually turning around from a mostly softer start Sunday night. We had followed up on a weaker Friday. Last Friday was end of the week, end of the month, so some position squaring with speculators taking profit, including ahead of what looked like a wetter weekend. We had that mostly verify, definitely better coverage, higher totals in the Eastern Corn Belt. The forecast looks like more of the same, some hot temperatures to get through, and then some rains on the way. But beyond that, demand proving more friendly to start the week. Some flash sales for soybeans to China for one on Monday morning, and then eventually some favorable announcements on biofuels policy that we were waiting for. Yet today, not the sustained strength that the bulls would want to see here, and instead taking a breather back lower here. You have soybeans and soy oil down along with crude oil, a hit of now more than $4 a barrel, at times on Monday down as much as $5 a barrel. So that's an evaporation of war risk premium in part. Similarly for wheat, we've had this storyline with war heating up again between Russia and Ukraine, but prospects for other ways for those two countries to get their exports out besides the Black Sea, which has been seeing skirmishes again and this flaring up of tension and disruption. So something for everybody in terms of storylines, but the Bears mostly in control this morning. A long session to go and still a long week yet as well.
And as you started, Joe, talking about yesterday, it was kind of a unique situation with the oil price and the relationship with the grains, wasn't it?
It was, because you think about oil, one leading the way, either higher or lower for the broader commodity complex, that if crude oil is going higher, it's going to attract investment interest in commodities that diversifies into other contracts like the grains or even livestock. But then to tie directly back to the grains, the biofuel storyline and the margins that can sharpen up for processors if crude oil is rallying. At the same time, though, you can have this decoupling like we observed on Monday, and that was the case in part because even with crude oil lower, there were those favorable developments being discussed about policy for biofuels, and that include these small refinery exemptions, the EPA announcing a basically split a decision on providing a couple full exemptions, but also partial for others, and declaring a few ineligible as well. So that's not what we had maybe feared going home for the weekend with this discussion about the government potentially granting full exemptions. And then you had on Friday as well talk about E15 year-round ethanol being added to the Farm Bill and this latest markup, and also a restructuring as a whole for the small refinery exemption program. And now these developments carried forward into this week were more friendly than not, but not helping so far, and back to thinking about lower crude oil as an overall drag on most commodities this morning.
Looks like another perfect day to get out there and enjoy the summer.
You hear that? Live music, laughing kids, the roar of the rides, and someone yelling, "Corn dogs!" That's Fair Spirit at the Iowa State Fair, August 13th through 23rd in Des Moines. 11 days of blue ribbon traditions, big summer nights, incredible food, and the kind of memories you talk about all year long. This is your Iowa State Fair. Plan your visit now at iowastatefair.org.
August 13th through the 23rd.
Back on Iowa Ag Matters, and last week Corteva had their field day up at Johnston, and Mark Magnuson was there, and he talks right now with Grant Harms as they talk about fungicide and where farmers are making their decisions based on economics. Mark
Magnuson for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and I'm joined today by Grant Harms. We are here at the Corteva and Pioneer Field Day. Grant, could you tell me, please, your job role here at Corteva?
Yeah, current role with Corteva Agriscience is technical field agronomist. I cover North and South Dakota, work with a lot of our reps selling our products to ag retailers in the region.
So Grant, this year, and we've talked about it already here today at the field day, a little less disease pressure than we saw last year in terms of that intensity. So what has that looked like in terms of fungicide applications for farmers this year? Have you seen that pull back in real time this year, or has it been similar to last year?
Well, I'd say when you're looking specifically at southern rust, we've had basically our fungicide timing models are way different year over year. You know, if you look at 2025, southern rust was here, it was prolific, it was a concern. This year, it's still coming, but it's not as bad as it was in 2025. So major difference between this time of year, year over year, 2025 versus 2026 when we're talking about southern rust. But I think people aren't necessarily pulling back on fungicides because fungicides still, it's a preventative way to treat your corn or your soybeans from future issues that may come. So I wouldn't say people are pulling back, but when you look at southern rust specifically, maybe that second application may not happen this year. It really depends on game time decisions. You know, what are these models saying 2-3 weeks from now when maybe wind patterns change or tar spot starts to replicate. So I wouldn't say it's a 100% pullback because plant health is still extremely important with fungicide applications at, tassel timing. It just may be that second or third application that, people will be making those decisions when the time comes.
And to your point, with southern rust last year, it was widespread across the state of Iowa. This year, it's been found in some of those southern counties, but that's not unusual for this. I mean, for any growing season, it can make its way into those southern counties. It just hasn't been like it was last year where it was everywhere.
Yeah, and we're talking southern rust, but in general, rust will be in the area. So, if you're making applications now to prevent gray leaf spot, northern corn leaf blight, common rust, tar spot, I think those applications are still occurring at tassel timing, knowing that you have to be preventative. Southern rust caught us by surprise last year. We didn't really know it was going to be as bad as some of the models were predicting. The models were right. So if anything, it gave us confidence in how accurate those models can be. Well, if we listen to the models now, southern rust may not be a concern right now, but other diseases would be, and plant health, we're always chasing that too. So I think tassel time applications are still going out, and we're looking to be preventative in nature.
And to your point, tar spot has just unfortunately become something that we have to factor in dealing with every year now.
Yeah, tar spot, once it's here, it's here. It's going to overwinter. It's going to be on that field for years to come. A little different from southern rust where it has to blow in with the wind.
He is Grant Harms with Corteva Agriscience. Grant, thanks so much for the time here today. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week.
You too. Thank you.
Your local radio station brings you the local news you depend on. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network complements that with ag news, weather, and market updates tailored for Iowa's farmers. Together, we deliver the best of both worlds, local connection and industry expertise. It's all to keep you connected with the heartbeat of the heartland. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, connecting rural Iowa with the news that matters to you.
ACM and CMA award winner, Hardy.
That's my favorite country song.
Live in concert.
I woke up on the wrong side of the truck bed this morning.
August 13th, 8 p.m., Iowa State Fair Grandstand.
You got it good, old boy.
With special guest McCoy Moore. Hardy Live. Reserve tickets on sale now through iowastatefair.org. Hardy 2026.
Time to run down those basis numbers for you here on Iowa Ag Matters on this Tuesday. I'm Dustin Huffman. About half of our elevators are making bid changes, all of them now on the November soybean contract. Let's go ahead and run them down for you. ADM in Burlington, 18 cents under on corn, $4.30. Soybeans, 30 cents under at $11.54. Cargill and Eddyville, 17 cents under on corn, cash bid $4.31. New Co-op Algona, 30 cents under on corn, $4.18. Soybeans, 25 cents under, cash bid $11.59. Ag State Sheldon, 19 cents under on corn, $4.29. Soybeans, 35 cents under, $11.49. Ag State Elta, 26 cents under on corn, $4.22 for the cash bid. Soybeans, 30 cents under at $11.54. Cargill Cedar Rapids, 7 cents under on corn, $4.41. Soybeans a nickel under, cash bid $11.79. Five Star Co-op Nashua, 30 cents under on corn, $4.18. Soybeans, 45 cents under, $11.39. Lincoln Way Energy Nevada, 20 cents under on corn, cash bid $4.28. ADM Des Moines, a nickel under on soybeans, cash price $11.79. New Co-op Red Oak, 20 cents under on corn, $4.28. Soybeans, 17 cents under, $11.67. Mid-Iowa Cooperative Green Mountain, 42 cents under on corn, cash bid $4.06. Soybeans, 50 cents under, $11.34. New Co-op Sheraton, 24 cents under on corn, $4.24. Soybeans, 25 cents under, cash bid $11.59. Walk-On Feed Ranch, 53 cents under on corn, $3.95. Soybeans, 64 cents under, $11.20. New Co-op Glidden, 29 cents under on corn, the cash price $4.19. Soybeans, 25 cents under, $11.59. Innovative Ag Services Farley, 42 cents under on corn, $4.06. Soybeans, 69 cents under, cash bid there $11.15. And finally at Cargill and Muscatine, they're 23 cents under on corn at $4.25. Soybeans are 30 cents under at $11.54. Cash, corn, and soybean bids are subject to change without notice. Always check with your local elevator when making sales to obtain the most recent price. That's been a check of your basis numbers here on Iowa Ag Matters. We'll be back right after this message.
Rod Stewart.
When I see you tonight,
A special evening with the icon.
on a downtown train,
A night of hit After hit. After hit. With special guest Richard Marks. Friday, August 14th, Iowa State Fair Grandstand. Reserve tickets on sale now through iowastatefair.org. Don't miss an electrifying event. Friday, August 14th. Rod Stewart, live.
You're listening to Iowa Ag Matters, and Dustin had the chance recently to speak with Austin Peiffer, discussing finances and making sure you have all of your finances in line, watching that balance sheet very closely so that you can line up your financing. Here's Dustin with more.
We're here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and I am being joined today by Austin Peiffer. He's an associate attorney for Ag and Business Legal Strategies. Austin, thanks for taking the time to visit with us here today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we're in a situation where someone may be asking, why do we have a lawyer on to talk about agriculture? But obviously, ag business and agriculture farms all need legal representation, need legal advice. And there's so many things right now in a situation we're finding ourselves in a tough ag economy. And farmers need to look at many different ways to protect their assets, protect their businesses, and make sure it's available for the next generation. So tell me a little bit about some of the challenges you're seeing farmers facing right now from the legal aspect of it.
Well, the legal challenges always stem initially from financial challenges. I shouldn't say always, but they often do. If money solves many problems, if you're making money, you can often make things work. But if the money isn't coming in, then things get tight. Well, we've had a string of, I think, about 4 years in a row of average profits on corn and beans being negative per acre. So that means the average producer, row crops of corn and beans like we have in Iowa, has probably lost money for 23, 24, 25, looking like 26, and the projections for 27 aren't any better. There have been government programs, they've helped, but it's not a cure-all. So what happens when times are tight? Well, the first symptom is often you can't pay off your operating note. Now, first time, maybe the bank will let you roll it over for a year. They figure it was a bad year. They understand farming. Second time, maybe they ask for more collateral. Maybe they didn't have a mortgage on everything before. Maybe there's some equipment that you hadn't pledged to them. And then you keep doing that. Well, wait a sec. All that equity that I had built up over all these years, paying down my land, paying down my equipment, I just gave that back to the bank to fund my operating loss for the last 2 or 3 years. A couple of bad years in farming can wipe out many good years. And ultimately, there comes a point where the bank says, we won't fund you anymore. You need to find a new lender, and you still need to pay us back. At that point, maybe you're lucky and you can go to another local bank. Maybe the problem isn't so much that it's your situation. Maybe the bank has just decided we're going to cut down on our ag portfolio. Or maybe it is the bank says you are a problem, but you've got a good relationship with another bank and you can go there. Oftentimes, if your finances are tight, you can't go to another local bank. Farm Credit might not take you. Your local bank might not take you. The normal financiers might not take you. You might be looking at a distressed financer, something like ARM, where they'll finance you, but there's a cap on what they'll lend, and they usually charge higher interest rates, and that just makes it harder for you to survive. Maybe this is the year that you do well and you pay off your operating line. You can make good on all your other debts, but on average, you're getting to a second tier lender because you're a worse credit risk and it's more likely that you're going to be in trouble. And then sometimes people get to the point where they say, well, I can't pay back my lenders and I don't even have enough money to pay back all of my vendors. And they might decide to prioritize paying the vendors over the lenders, and that can be a problem because the lenders, they typically have a security interest. that says all of your crops go to us before you go pay anyone else. When everything's fine and you're able to pay off the loan, a lender probably doesn't care that you took your first corn check and paid some rents or paid for fuel or whatever, as long as they get paid off. If they're not going to get paid off, suddenly they get awful prickly about that. And they're not much fans of not getting paid off. So then you're looking at questions about converting collateral, and maybe they're going to report you to the FBI for suspicious activity. So, I mean, it can spiral out of control really quickly from something that seems as innocent as, oh, well, I've had a couple bad years, and now I need to pay for fuel, I need to pay for repairs, what have you. So it's amazing how quickly things can get out of control and the problems that people can have if they don't ask for help at the right time.
This year at the Iowa State Fair, Fair Spirit meets 250 years of American history in a celebration across the fair. See the America 250 Iowa display and a permanent sculpture created just for the fair. Walk the Iowa Veterans Memorial Walkway honoring service and sacrifice. Experience 250 years of the American flag, along with red, white, and blue contests and fair favorites. Then look to the sky for drone shows glowing in red, white, and blue, lighting up the fair like never before. From history to celebration, it all comes together at the Iowa State Fair. Learn more at iowastatefair.org.
August 13th through the 23rd.
Well, Mark, we're looking at a few things here, and we got some new statistics with some land values. Mark, you want to tell us what you found?
Yeah, Dustin, following a multi-year trend of rising land prices, the average value of U.S. cropland has now climbed above $6,000 per acre for the first time. And that shows the resilience of farmland prices despite weaker farm income and tighter profit margins. And of course, that data was put together by USDA's National Agricultural Statistics Service. And it just goes to show that, yes, these day-to-day problems with the bottom line, input prices, all of those things happening. But in the background, those cropland prices staying pretty steady and actually slowly on the rise.
Well, that's definitely some interesting information. Of course, that's going to throw even more interesting perceptions, or I shouldn't say perceptions, but results into an ag economy that's already in an interesting place. More Iowa Ag Matters in a moment.
Your local radio station brings you the local news you depend on. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network complements that with ag news, weather, and market updates tailored for Iowa's farmers. Together, we deliver the best of both worlds, local connection and industry expertise. It's all to keep you connected with the heartbeat of the heartland. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, connecting rural Iowa with the news that matters to you.
This is the Midday Market Update on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson, joined today by Brian Doherty of Total Farm Marketing. Brian, what's happening with the trade in the grains?
Yeah, trade in the grains is the opposite of yesterday. In particular, corn down 8 cents today. Yesterday, December corn finished up 8 1/2 on a really nice bullish key reversal on the charts. Well, what does that mean? That just means the trend was down into yesterday. The market had posted a lower low than the previous day, and then a higher high yesterday with a higher close. Nice signal to the bulls in the market. They got the confirmation of the declining crop ratings on the afternoon report yesterday, Mark, with 2 percentage points down in the good and excellent categories, now at 61%, and then 2% increase in the poor to very poor. That is now at 14%. So that's double what it was last year at the same time, which was 7%, obviously. But today, taking that back, you got some rain moving across the Midwest. You got weakness in beans on rain beneficial and a lack of change in the crop ratings on soybeans. And then the wheat market just struggling today, down about, let's call it a big dime. Crude oil, probably one of the factors today, down again sharply today, down $4.50 a barrel, down near $5 yesterday. So that's quite a substantial drop in the last two sessions. That'll spill over into most commodities, and it seems to spill over into grains today.
What's happening on the livestock side of the trade?
Today I've got the cattle market quiet, which is something we normally don't say, because in this sort of new age of cattle trade, give or take 50 cents is what I'd call neutral, and that's where everything is in the live market right now. August live cattle 17 higher, 231.27, waiting for cash trade to develop. Expectations are we may see some bump in cash prices, but nobody's really betting on that just yet. We're kind of past that lull of 4th of July. Now we're into August. We'll see what develops here. I got to think support might come in the cattle complex from just that intense heat that a lot of these feedlots and farmers just had to put up with, and the weight gain wasn't great. In fact, it was pretty poor, and there was some death loss. So I think the market has support coming from there. Feeders up a couple dollars today. Milk market mixed to lower, mostly bear spreading there.
That was Brian Doherty with Total Farm Marketing. We will have a check of the numbers next.
No one knows your fields better than you, but it's hard to be everywhere at once. Sky Scout from Landis Cooperative helps you keep an eye on every acre throughout the growing season. Using aerial imagery and expert analysis, Sky Scout can help identify crop stress, stand concerns, nutrient issues, and other potential challenges before they become bigger problems. The result? More informed decisions and greater confidence in every pass across the field. Because the earlier you know, the more options you have. Talk with your Landis representative or call 515-817-2100 to learn more about Sky Scout today.
September corn down 8 cents at 441 1/4. September soybeans down 19 3/4 at 11.54. September soybean meal down 3.40 at 3.12 even. September soybean oil down 62 cents at 68.17. Chicago wheat down 14 1/4 at 636 3/4. Minneapolis wheat down 10 cents at 686. August live cattle up 18 cents at 231.28. August feeder cattle up 253 at 350.35. August lean hogs up 5 cents at 97.58. Class 3 milk down 13 cents at 16.94. That was a check of the midday markets on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson.
Back into those markets we go here on Iowa Ag Matters, and now we're going to look at the livestock side of the equation to get a mixed day in cattle. Hogs a little bit lower. We're going to find out what's going on. Joe Camp of Comstock talks about the climate in that livestock trade with Mark Magnuson.
What's happening on the livestock side of the trade?
We've got a tentative rebound for cattle futures. They also turned around, in this case on Monday, from higher to lower. They had a real strong follow-through coming off of last week, volatility reigning supreme. When we talk about feeder cattle having started off limit lower, the reaction to the news about the phased reopening of the Mexican border, it's been, of course, shuttered because of the screwworm threat. But then the traders thinking, well, not so fast. It's not only going to be still 3 weeks now until that phased reopening starts, but it's also a phased reopening. So it starts, the westernmost ports in Arizona, then into New Mexico. The announcement did not even mention a timeline for Texas. So you have that, not only that, but legal challenges as well popping up against the border reopening because of the screwworm risk. And then this concept of the board also having been knocked back far enough relative to what we're seeing in a more resilient cash trade. And last week, the cash price is finally perking up a bit after a several week slide. The same could be true going forward, that the fundamental trader out there, the commercial hedger, is looking towards these cattle futures as providing value relative to what could be an upward trend yet this month for beef prices. That was the case last year, that we had the wholesale beef cutout numbers rising towards a new high eventually, but rising in the lead up to Labor Day, like we're now a month out from.
What about the hog side of the trade?
Hogs, they had a couple of strong days to talk about, and then a couple of really weak ones last week. So volatility there. We're kind of stabilizing this week after that big break lower. We had been in a general retracement over the last month, the second half of June, and then into July, more friendly after a long three and a half month slide before that. The board had retraced about 2/3 of that slide, so we can get into talk about the technicals and the computer algorithms, noticing what was a 62% Fibonacci retracement, for example. and then turning the board back lower. It's definitely a speculative game here for the hogs after the commodity funds had come down from in February more than 100,000 contract net long to almost taking it down to a record net short of more than 30,000 to the bearish side.
In rural Iowa, we know you're sold on your local radio station. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network partners with local Iowa stations to deliver the latest in agriculture news, including grain elevator prices, market reports, and ag policy news. Trusted local voices, trusted ag content. This message is brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
Well, back on Iowa Ag Matters, we are, of course, keeping an eye on what's going on in the renewable fuels industry. Of course, the E15 into the Senate version of the Farm Bill once again. But Riley Smith had a chance to talk with the folks at the Clean Fuels Alliance to see how things are going in the industry right now.
The Environmental Protection Agency's new renewable fuel standard volumes are giving the biodiesel industry a significant boost. The agency raised biomass-based diesel obligations to levels the industry says more accurately reflect production capacity. Paul Winters, Clean Fuels Alliance Director of Public Affairs, said the higher volumes are already creating stronger demand throughout the agricultural economy.
So the volume that everyone agreed on was 5.25 billion gallons. That's the production volume that everyone settled on. Some people were higher, some people were lower, but we all sort of agreed on 5.25 as the minimum volume that could be produced. For the 2025 RFS volumes, EPA had set 3.35 billion gallons as the volume. And that had a pretty devastating effect on our industry, combined with uncertainty over tax credits. Essentially, a lot of small producers were forced to idle production.
The new rule raises biomass-based diesel volumes to about 5.4 billion gallons. Winters said the impact is already being felt across the industry.
We saw some idled plants come back into production. We saw other small producers just ramping up to the highest volume they could manage and run at full out. They've been doing so for several months now. So overall, the biodiesel industry is operating at more 86% of the capacity that is estimated to be operable.
Beyond biodiesel production, Winters said the increased volumes are driving investment farther up the supply chain, creating new opportunities for soybean growers and processors.
I mean, the first impact you're seeing is in the soybean processing industry. So the oilseed processors have invested more than $6 billion over the past 4 or 5 years to expand their capacity by a third. The oilseed processing industry for a long time had running capacity to crush about 2 billion bushels of soybeans every single year. The United States was up planting and harvesting more than 4 billion bushels of soybeans every year. And then there were disruptions in international markets. So this year, the oilseed processing industry in the United States is scheduled to process about 2.6 billion bushels. And it will even go higher next year, 2.75 billion bushels.
Winters said investments are also translating into jobs and renewed economic activity in rural communities, including a previously closed plant in Wall Lake, Iowa.
We actually sent a letter to President Trump in mid-June highlighting several of those stories. So we highlighted a plant in Iowa, in Wall Lake, Iowa, that had shut down in 2025 and had not laid off all of its employees, but was definitely reducing its workforce. That plant is up operating at full capacity now and is rehiring all those employees.
For more information, visit cleanfuels.org.
Hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
In rural Iowa, we know you're sold on your local radio station. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network partners with local Iowa stations to deliver the latest in agriculture news, including grain elevator prices, market reports, and ag policy news. Trusted local voices, trusted ag content. This message is brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
Well, Dustin, it has been a pretty similar pattern, but as we continue to watch the ag markets today, there's just so much happening that is affecting the ag marketplace. You think about the weather right now, of course, these forecasts are playing a big part in what's happening with the price movement. We have the two situations with conflict and war, not only the United States and Iran and what that's doing with the oil price and everything involved there. Also have Russia, Ukraine, how that affects the wheat marketplace specifically. And then you have things like the E15 getting included into the Senate version of the Farm Bill, giving a little bit of positive news to the renewable fuels industry.
Yeah, but weather is going to be the top draw right now that affects those markets. And so that's what's going to trump everything, no matter what's happening, because weather is what's going to determine what we pull out of that field.
And that's what's going to determine what we have for those final yield numbers as we get closer to the end of the growing season. Thanks for joining us for Iowa Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.